my calling, my powers, my love. You destroyed it all, thinking you could have me for yourself. Well, here I am. So, why are you cowering? Modern Queen Tales presents Protectress, Reborn, Part 1, The Fall. The wind was a snarling beast, whipping the rain against my skin like 1,000 tiny needles. 5 years of secret life, 5 years of fighting crime dressed in a golden, sleek, armored leotard that mimicked the streamlined efficiency of a diver's suit. And it had all come down to this: a final, brutal dance on the slick, lightning-kissed rooftop of the highest skyscraper overlooking the Pacific. The ocean churned below, an infinite, black maw ready to swallow me whole. I was losing, badly. My opponent, Inferno, was a masked phantom of pure, malevolent force. Every strike he threw was a memory, a lesson I myself had taught him. He was a perfect, dark mirror of my technique, but stronger, faster, and utterly devoid of the restraint he'd once possessed. Clang! His fist met my reinforced gauntlet, sending a shockwave up my arm that rattled my teeth. I rolled back, dodging a low sweep, and tried to counter with a signature spinning kick, a move he used to fumble in training. He caught my ankle midair. "Slow, Taryn," he hissed, his voice a low mechanical distortion behind the iron mask. "You always telegraph the wind-up." He didn't throw me. He didn't use brute force. He simply twisted his wrist with cold, clinical precision, and a spike of white-hot pain shot up my leg, making me cry out. I dropped, forcing him to release me. I scrambled backward, rain blurring my blue eyes, my perfect blonde hair plastered to my cheek. This wasn't just a fight. It was a torment. He was enjoying watching me struggle, exploiting every single weakness I had ever confessed to him, physical or otherwise. "The bomb, Dante. It's set to detonate in 3 minutes. Why are you doing this?" I pleaded, trying to appeal to the good man I knew, the man who was buried somewhere beneath that mask. "Silence." He lunged, and I barely blocked the blow with both forearms, the impact forcing the air out of my lungs in a desperate whoosh. He didn't use powers, just terrifying, honed strength. And he was standing between me and the device, guarding it like a dragon. Below us, in the small, glass-encased utility room, I saw the frantic movements of a small figure, Sabrina, my analyst, my brain, my only true confidant. She was supposed to be safe, miles away, monitoring traffic and advising from her custom server rack. I had specifically, harshly, forbidden her from ever stepping foot near an active scene, much less a nuclear threat. "She's trying to sneak in to deactivate it." Inferno paused, his masked head cocked slightly, as if he heard the faint frequency of my panic through the roaring wind. He wasn't stupid. He was Dante. He knew Sabrina's role. He pivoted with impossible speed, his body blurring. Before I could even launch myself to intercept, he reached into his coat and produced a silenced firearm, a cold, sickening deviation from our usual hand-to-hand combat. No, not like this. A single, muffled shot echoed over the storm's roar. I saw the glass of the utility room shatter, and Sabrina's slight figure collapsed, disappearing from my sight. My mind went utterly, sickeningly blank. The rain stopped feeling like needles. It felt like warm, gushing tears. Sabrina was dead. The one person who had been there from the start, dead, because I had failed to keep him contained. Dead, because I had been distracted. Dead, because of my arrogance. A roar ripped from my throat, a sound far louder than the storm itself, the enraged, broken sound of Taryn losing everything. I Charged. Pure, blinding fury replacing technique. My golden armor seemed to ignite with the rage of 1,000 suns. I didn't care about the nuclear bomb anymore. I only cared about making him suffer the way I was suffering. Inferno didn't even flinch. He took every strike, which in the past had broken through concrete pillars, as if I was hitting him with a soft pillow. He let me close the distance, sidestepping my wild, powerful blow. He wrapped one massive arm around my waist, his grip crushing, and simply lifted me. I struggled, but I might as well have been a child's doll. He held me high above the rooftop, the wind momentarily dying, leaving only the sound of my ragged breathing and the ticking of the clock downstairs. Then he slammed me down. It was a calculated, full-force, body-breaking throw directly onto the rain-slicked concrete. The impact reverberated through my spine, a shock so profound and agonizing that it stole my ability to breathe, to move, to even twitch my fingers. The world exploded into white light, then faded to a dark, numb agony. I lay there, utterly defeated, looking up at the silhouette of the man who was once my heart. I tried to push myself up, but my limbs failed, unresponsive to my frantic mental commands. I was trapped in my own body. Tears, hot and useless, mixed with the cold rain on my cheeks. Dante, I rasped, the real name leaving my lips like a final desperate prayer. Please, stop. This isn't you. You've turned into a monster. He stood over me, his head tilted. He reached up, his movements slow and deliberate, and finally unclasped the fastening on the back of his mask. It fell away, landing with a splash in a nearby puddle. The face I saw made my stomach clench. It was Dante, unmistakable, but worse. Far worse than the scars I had first seen, far worse than the burns he supposedly suffered in the fire. His skin was a grotesque map of crimson scar tissue, stretching his features into a permanent, agonized grimace. His eyes, though, were the same. A stunning, deep brown, now filled with an absolute, chilling emptiness. A monster? His voice, unmasked, was a low, gravelly whisper that cut through the storm. I always was, Taryn. But you, and Sabrina, you found a broken creature and gave it a name, a beautiful suit, and the promise of a future. You gave me hope, only to take it back. You left me worse than before you found me. His eyes, full of 5 years of pain and betrayal, pierced my soul. I was paralyzed, but his gaze felt like a physical weight, pressing me further into the ground. He stooped, grabbed my armor's shoulder clasp, and dragged my unresponsive body across the wet rooftop. He stopped only when my face was directly in front of the window overlooking the utility room, where a digital clock displayed the final, terrifying countdown. 2 seconds. 1 second. I closed my eyes, bracing for the inevitable blinding flash. The nuclear winter. The final, agonizing incineration. I felt the cold despair of having survived everything only to die here, betrayed by the man I loved, in the moments after losing my best friend. 0. Silence. A slow, maddening silence. There was no explosion, no flash, no wave of heat. The only sounds were the rain, the wind, and the heavy breathing of Dante standing over me. He let out a single, bitter, almost hysterical laugh. Bait, Taryn. Just bait. You threw everything away for a lie. He grabbed me one final time, hoisting my limp, paralyzed form effortlessly. The last thing I saw was his scarred face, contorted in a mask of absolute sorrow and hatred, before the skyline inverted. He didn't need a bomb to kill me. He threw me outward, over the edge, into the dark, churning abyss of the ocean below. The water was a freezing shock, but the greater agony was the crushing, spiraling sense of failure. I plummeted, the heavy gold of my suit acting as an anchor, pulling me down into the endless, dark cold. I embraced the unconsciousness as the only form of escape left to me. Part 2. The rewind. I shot out of the water, gasping a jagged, painful breath, the cold ocean shock instantly gone, replaced by the blazing warmth of the sun. I thrashed for a moment, disoriented, the sound of crashing waves filling my ears. My golden armor felt heavy, but suddenly, the paralyzing pain was gone. I kicked, finding the shallow bottom with my feet, and stood up, dripping, on soft white sand. The sky was a perfect, crystalline blue. The ocean glittered under the mid-morning light. There was no skyscraper, no storm, no ticking clock. I stood, shivering slightly, on a deserted stretch of beach where the only structures were a few rocky outcrops. A few yards away, 2 people were sitting on beach towels, laughing. My heart seized, not from fear, but from the brutal shock of impossible hope. There was Sabrina, still in her ridiculously oversized sun hat, checking something on a sleek tablet, alive, whole, and perfectly well. And next to her, facing the ocean, was Dante. He turned, hearing my gasp. His face, the face I had just seen scarred and hateful, was perfectly smooth, unblemished, save for a few faint, almost unnoticeable lines of residual healing from the initial, long-ago burns. He was smiling, a genuine, easy smile, the smile I remembered from the brief, glorious time when things were good. "Taryn, you okay?" he called out, standing up. He wore simple shorts and nothing more, his body lean and powerful, not yet the muscle-bound engine of destruction he'd become. 5 years ago, the knowledge hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't dead. I was back. Somehow, the cosmic horror of that moment, the fake bomb, the fatal betrayal, the plunge into the dark, had ripped me out of my timeline and dropped me here, 5 years before everything went catastrophically wrong. My first instinctual thought was pure, unadulterated rage. He was the one who had murdered Sabrina. He was the one who had condemned me to death. I wanted to use the surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins, charge him, and take him down right here, right now, before he could become Inferno. I clenched my fists, the memory of his raw, effortless strength, the strength that had shattered my spine, flashing in my mind. I couldn't win. Not here. Not yet. The Dante I fought minutes ago, years from now, was a master. This Dante was dangerous, yes, but untrained. Still, I wasn't willing to risk the only gift I had left, a second chance. I had to play it safe. I needed information. I let out a shaky breath, forcing the emotion down, replacing the rage with the practiced, effortless charm of Taryn, the beautiful blonde cheerleader and model. "I'm fine," I managed, my voice sounding strained. I gave him a wobbly, confused smile. "Just, the water's colder than I thought. Did I fall asleep?" Dante walked over, his eyes showing only concern, not the chilling, empty hatred of Inferno. He took my hand, his touch warm and familiar, and helped pull me onto the sand. "You drifted out further than usual, that's all. We were just talking about your next photo shoot for Vogue." He glanced at Sabrina, who was now walking over, her expression a mix of motherly concern and annoyance. "You never listen to my safety briefings, Taryn," Sabrina scolded, but her tone was light. "Stay closer to the shore. We need your reflexes sharp for tonight's patrol." I stared at her, her voice, her small, familiar figure. She's alive. The dissonance was deafening. My best friend, my closest partner, the woman I trusted with my life, who died trying to save both myself and the city. I'm sorry, Bri, I said, using the nickname I hadn't used in the past year of the old timeline, when the tension between us had become too thick to bear. I'll be more careful. Dante knelt beside me, pulling a fresh towel from a bag and wrapping it around my shoulders. The gesture of care, of the good, simple man I'd been fighting so desperately to save, was nearly enough to break me. No matter how hard I tried, I could not match the two images in my head. The good man who'd come to my aid at the slightest sign of trouble, even though he knew fully well of my superpowers. The scarred monster who took pleasure in my pain as he shattered both my spirit and body, claiming I was the one to hurt him first. How could both be the same person? We need to get you back to the HQ and warm you up, he said, his hand resting briefly, gently, on my forearm. As we walked back to the car, Sabrina chattering about our next mission, I pieced together the fragments of this moment. We were 6 months past the initial incident, the night Sabrina and I, as Protectress and her analyst, had found Dante. Flashback, the vagrant, the raw power. I remembered the storm that night too, but that storm had been in the city's heart. We were trying to apprehend him, the vagrant known only for his raw, animalistic strength and the severe burns that covered his body. The police suspected him of killing a social worker. We'd found him in a brutal, silent fight against 3 armed thugs, drunken football players who thought tormenting the homeless would make for a fun night. He'd wiped them out using sheer, untrained ferocity, moving with the speed of a startled viper. As soon as he saw me arriving, he escaped, but I saw his potential. It turned out he was innocent. The social worker was killed by her deranged husband. When we took him back to our secret base, I saw beyond the scars. I saw the pure, defensive fire in his eyes, the intelligence, and the desperate yearning for a fresh start. I offered it to him. I had the technology, the same ancient yet advanced alien tech that gave me my enhanced strength and speed and allowed my golden suit to be both impossibly thin and diamond hard. I offered to use it to heal his scars, to train him, to give him purpose. He accepted. The process had been long and painful, but successful. He'd gone from the scarred vagrant to a handsome, quiet, fiercely intelligent man. And somewhere during the long training sessions, the late-night talks, and the shared glances across the compound, we had fallen in love. It had been brief, intense, and perfect. I remembered the kiss, the first kiss, near the secret, hidden waterfall he'd found while on a solo exercise. So, why? How did it all go so wrong? Was it really my own fault? I looked at Sabrina, her face innocent and focused on her tablet, and felt a cold, hard knot of fear and betrayal tighten in my chest. I had a monster on my team. That much I knew. But I couldn't rely on my tech expert to find answers for me this time, or I risked losing her in this timeline too. I had to get answers and justice on my own. I had 5 years' worth of knowledge in a timeline that was only 2 months old. I wasn't just Taryn, the cheerleader. I was Taryn, the survivor of the apocalypse she caused. This time, I wouldn't let my misplaced faith ruin everything. This time, I was playing God. Part 3, The Investigation. Over the next few weeks, I lived a double life that made my former secret identity feel like child's play. By day, I was the charming, airheaded model, dating the quiet, handsome trainee Dante. By night, I was the vigilant Protectress, but my primary focus was no longer on petty criminals. It was on Dante, Sabrina, and the approaching date of the inevitable, life-shattering betrayal. I watched Dante constantly. I monitored his training, his sleep cycles, even his recreational runs into the city. I was looking for the flaw, the darkness, the seed of Inferno that the other timeline had confirmed. I found nothing but quiet discipline, a profound gratitude, and a love that was growing dangerously fast. The love that had ultimately been used to break me. Every touch was electric. Every glance was a reminder of what was coming. "You're distracted, Taryn," he said one afternoon during a sparring session in the hidden gym beneath my modeling studio. His voice was low, and his brown eyes were fixed on mine, searching. I had missed a simple feint, a move I'd taught him myself, just tired. Long shoot yesterday. He stopped, lowering his fists. "No, it's more than that. You've been looking through me lately, like you're waiting for me to disappear. Did I do something wrong?" His vulnerability was a punch to my gut. Before sadistic Inferno reveled in my pain, sweet Dante had craved my approval. I stepped closer, forcing myself to smile, forcing myself to lie. "Of course not, Dante. You're perfect. I'm just worried about the next big mission. I feel like something terrible is coming." It wasn't a lie. I could feel it, the weight of my future crashing down on my present. The crucial date finally arrived, October 18th, the night the Costa family, the known Italian mob, would be wiped out, supposedly by Dante's hand. 35 people killed brutally. At first, I refused to believe it, but every piece of evidence Sabrina showed me made it impossible for me to find a different explanation, until I finally gave into cold-hearted logic and accepted the picture presented in front of me. On my previous timeline, I remember the look on his face when we confronted him, the sadness when realizing we weren't on his side. I tried to be gentle when apprehending him, only to realize how much he had been holding back during our training. Even then, I could tell his power was superior to mine. We chased him into an abandoned building, where our fight caused an accidental fire. I was able to escape. He wasn't. He burned alive as the building collapsed. I thought I had failed by not recognizing his potential for evil, by falling in love with him, and finally, by not saving him in spite of everything. To avoid collapsing from grief, I buried myself in my superhero mission for the next 5 years, thinking time was making me heal until, one day, a video began to play on every phone and TV screen of the city. It was Dante, now calling himself Inferno, saying he had a bomb and challenging me to a fight. On this timeline, I was ready. I lied to Sabrina, telling her I had a charity gala to attend. I lied to Dante, telling him I needed him to stay at the HQ, ostensibly to monitor a fake anomaly in his body supposedly caused by my treatment of his burns, but in reality, to keep him in a concrete, verifiable location. As soon as the sun set, I donned a modified stealth suit, black, not gold, and took off across the city. I wasn't going to the Costa compound. I was going to Dante. I found him exactly where I'd left him, sitting in the primary control center, staring intently at the simulated crime map Sabrina had set up. He was doing exactly as he was told, the picture of quiet, disciplined loyalty. I settled into a blind spot on the rafters above him, activating my thermal cloaking, and prepared to wait. Hours passed. Dante never moved. He read a book, checked the monitors, and even ran a self-diagnostic on the communication systems. He was innocent. He was absolutely, verifiably, 100% not at the scene of the crime. I stayed until 3 a.m., the exact time the news reports had stated the massacre occurred in the previous timeline. I watched him finally yawn, stretch, and head to his small private room. Was I misremembering the dates? Had I already changed something in this timeline without noticing? I flew home, landing back at my studio just as the city lights began to dim. I stripped out of the stealth suit and powered up my own secret broadcast receiver. The headline was already screaming across the national news channels. Brutal massacre in City Heights. Costa family wiped out. I sank onto the floor, the cold dread turning to nausea. The crime had still happened. 35 people were dead. Dante never moved, yet the universe had followed its original script. He was innocent all along. My past self, the Protectress who saw her lover turn into Inferno, had been utterly, fatally wrong. Someone else was the killer, and that killer had orchestrated the perfect frame job. But, worse than that, I had doubted the one person who deserved my unconditional trust. This realization, knowing that my failure had not been in loving Dante, but in not loving him enough to believe in his innocence, brought back all the grief and guilt that I had suppressed for 5 years. I cried for hours, covering my mouth so as not to make a sound. It was a remote chance, but if someone heard me, they might have tried to console me, and the one thing I felt I didn't deserve right now was a shoulder to cry on. I might have stayed in that pitiful state for days, but then one thought brought me back to here and now. There was only one person in my inner circle who had the knowledge, the access, and the motive to execute such a devastating, life-ruining betrayal. Part 4. The True Monster. The next morning, Sabrina burst into the HQ control center, her face flushed with anxiety, a stack of printouts in her hands. "Taryn, have you seen the news? It's horrific! But listen to this. The evidence is already pointing toward Dante." I was sitting at the control desk, calm and cold. I had spent the past few hours crafting my trap. Sabrina slapped the papers down on the console, pointing to the reports of enhanced DNA found at the scene, witness descriptions of a figure of impossible strength, and a digital trace leading to an old, decommissioned server bank only Dante and I knew about. "He did it, Taryn! All the evidence, the pattern of extreme violence, the specific method of incapacitation, it's textbook Dante's old style, before his training. He couldn't handle the normal life. I knew we should have never trusted him." Sabrina's voice was strained, almost manic. She sounded convinced, but beneath the fear, I heard a thrilling certainty. She was relieved. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms, my gaze unwavering. "I know what the evidence says, Sabrina, but the evidence is a lie." Sabrina froze. Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. She tried to laugh it off, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "What? Taryn, don't be absurd. I've checked the data myself. It's all here. Every single trace element confirms it was him." "No," I corrected, my voice deadly soft. "It confirms it was someone strong enough to fight like him, someone who knew exactly how to plant false clues that pointed only to him. You see, Sabrina, the only person who knows our old, decommissioned server address is you and me." Her pale blue eyes, usually so sharp and focused, suddenly darted around the room. Her hands trembled on the reports. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, pulling the papers back. "You're hysterical. You're defending a monster because you're attracted to him. He's playing you, Taryn. He always was a monster." Last night, while the Costa family was being massacred, Dante was here. He was sitting at this very console, reading a paperback, and performing a diagnostics check on the comm system. I saw him. The security logs, which I installed myself, show no outgoing traffic from his phone, no unauthorized movements, and his vital signs were consistent with peaceful rest from 1 a.m. until sunrise. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the polished floor. I walked around the console until I was standing directly in front of her. The person who framed Dante had to have known every detail of his fighting style, his old habits, and our private network structure. That person, Sabrina, is you. The facade finally, brutally cracked. Sabrina didn't deny it. Instead, her face twisted with a frightening mixture of hurt, rage, and sudden, manic possession. "Yes! Fine, I did it!" she shrieked, her voice echoing off the concrete walls. "But I did it for you, Taryn! Can't you see? He was taking you away! He was an animal! I found you! I built you! I was the one who made Protectress happen! We were supposed to be the ultimate team!" But then he came along with his pretty face and his sad story, and you gave him the golden suit, the healing, the attention that was mine. Her confession hung in the air, thick and poisoned. The toxic trade, the hidden darkness, was finally revealed. She hadn't been an analyst. She had been a possessive admirer, and Dante was simply a rival she needed to eliminate. I felt a deep, profound sorrow. The tragedy was that I had been right all along, just about the wrong person. The monster wasn't Dante. It was the friend I had died trying to protect in another timeline. "I'm sorry, Sabrina," I said, my voice heavy with pity, "but you cannot own people. You cannot destroy a man's life because you feel entitled to mine." She didn't hear the pity. She only heard the rejection, and the sight of my pity only fueled her final, total descent. Part 5. The Betrayal. Sabrina's smile was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. Sharp, broken, and utterly devoid of sanity. "I don't want your pity, Taryn. I want you. And if you won't come to me willingly, I'll take you. I'll make you understand. We'll be together forever, and no one, certainly not that gutter rat, will ever come between us again." I took a defensive stance, the golden armor already humming beneath my clothes, ready to phase into visibility. "Stop this, Sabrina. Give up now. I won't fight you. You don't have a choice." She took 2 steps back and pressed a small, hidden button on the side of her wrist. The transformation was instantaneous, horrifying, and incredibly loud. From the floor, the walls, and the ceiling, reinforced metal plates shot out and snapped around her. In seconds, she was encased in a mechanized outfit, a towering, gunmetal gray suit that bristled with hydraulics and menacing weaponry. It wasn't sleek like my suit. It was heavy, brutal, and designed for maximum destruction. "This is what killed the Costas," she gloated, her voice now amplified and distorted through the suit's helmet. "I don't have your stupid alien enhancements, Taryn, but I have technology, and this technology makes me stronger than you, stronger than Dante, stronger than anyone." The realization hit me. The supposed enhanced DNA and impossible strength evidence wasn't Dante's old style. It was the sheer brute force of a mechanical exoskeleton. "You're finished, Taryn," Sabrina declared, raising one massive, metallic fist. "I'll break you down, piece by piece, and then I'll rebuild you into my perfect partner. I think she's right about one thing, Taryn." The voice came from behind Sabrina. It was low, firm, and filled with a controlled fury that made my blood run cold. "Dante." Sabrina spun around, startled. "What? How did you—" He stepped out of the shadows of the adjacent gear closet, where I had instructed him to hide while I set the trap, just in case. I had told him to listen, not to intervene. But seeing the true depth of Sabrina's depravity, I knew he wouldn't be able to stand by. "I heard the whole pathetic monologue, Sabrina," Dante said, his body vibrating with an intense, barely restrained energy. "I heard how you framed me. I heard how you tried to destroy everything she built." Sabrina recovered quickly, her fear turning into cruel amusement. "Oh, the little lapdog came out to play. Good. I'll enjoy crushing you first. She can watch." She launched herself at Dante, who was still unarmed and unsuited. "Dante, no! Get out of here!" I screamed, finally activating my golden armor and leaping forward, but the mech was too fast. Crunch. Sabrina's metallic fist connected with Dante's chest. The sound was sickening, like a tree trunk snapping. He didn't have the golden armor, he only had the enhanced muscle from the healing process. He flew backward, slamming into the concrete wall with enough force to crack it, before falling limp and silent to the floor. My breath hitched. He's gone. The fear, the trauma of the previous timeline, instantly rushed back. This was exactly how it always ended. Dante broken, me alone. The loss fueled a second, even more violent surge of rage. I launched myself at Sabrina, my golden suit shimmering as I attacked her with a combination of speed and strength. Clang! 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 I struck the mechanized suit repeatedly, denting the outer plates, but the core structure held. She was slow, but she was impossibly strong. She backhanded me, and I slid across the floor, my mind reeling from the impact. Useless, Taryn. You fight so pretty, but this suit is everything you are, multiplied by 1,000. Sabrina roared, advancing slowly, menacingly. I tried to use the console as a shield, but she simply smashed through it, sparking wires and shattered screens raining down around us. She grabbed my neck with one giant metal claw, lifting me into the air effortlessly. The pressure immediately cut off my oxygen supply. My vision swam. I clawed uselessly at the thick metal digits crushing my throat. "Look at you," Sabrina whispered through her suit's speaker, holding me suspended, helpless. "So perfect, so powerful, but you need me, Taryn. You always have. You just don't know it yet." She squeezed harder, and black spots danced before my eyes. "I'm going to take you to a place where no one will ever find us," she bragged, oblivious to the silence behind her. "I'm going to keep you safe and train you properly. I'm going to break that beautiful spirit of yours, and when I'm done, you'll be my obedient, loving partner. I'll mark you so clearly that even that scarred little boy won't dare to look at you again." Her words, full of sick, possessive entitlement, were the last thing I heard before my lungs burned out and my consciousness began to fade. But someone else heard them. Dante. I hadn't seen it, but I felt it. A sudden, profound shift in the very atmosphere of the room. It wasn't the sound of an approaching storm or a machine powering up. It was the sound of a boundary being violently broken. Dante woke up. He had just heard the woman who framed him, ruined his life, and killed his soul in another timeline, threatened to take the last remaining good thing from him. The man I knew, the simple, kind-hearted man, was gone. In his place was the thing I had always feared, the thing that had tossed me into the ocean. Inferno. A guttural, animalistic roar filled the room, a sound of pure, incandescent, uncontainable fury. He launched himself off the floor, not running but seemingly exploding toward Sabrina's towering mech. It wasn't technique, it was a primal, physics-defying surge of raw power, the likes of which I had only seen in the nightmare of the future. The attack wasn't a fight, it was a demolition. His fist connected with the back of Sabrina's armored helmet. Boom! The force was so overwhelming that the sound barrier seemed to crack. Sabrina's mech staggered, the steel around the impact point buckling and warping like cheap aluminum. "You don't touch her!" Dante roared, his voice thick with a mixture of agony and wrath. Sabrina dropped me instinctively, turning her mech's powerful frame toward him. "You should be dead, you piece of trash!" He didn't respond with words. He didn't use my elegant defensive blocks or martial maneuvers. He used brute force. He grabbed the mechanized arm that had just crushed my windpipe, and with a sound like tearing metal, ripped it off at the shoulder joint. Hydraulic fluid sprayed everywhere, mixing with the dust. Sabrina screamed in a combination of pain and disbelief. She tried to fire her other weapon, but Dante was already moving, a blur of unyielding muscle and savage speed. He slammed his body into the mech's torso, driving it backward through the wall of the HQ and out into the empty lot behind my studio. I staggered to my feet, coughing, watching the carnage in stunned horror. This is it. This is the monster I ran from. The monster I failed to save. Dante, his face contorted in a terrifying expression of bloodlust, was dismantling the suit piece by piece. He was using his fists like hammers, his body like a battering ram, fueled by the memory of betrayal and the near loss of me. Every strike cracked the reinforced metal. Every slam further shredded the mechanical joints. Sabrina's screams from inside the suit were muffled, high-pitched, and terrifying. Finally, Dante tore the helmet off, revealing Sabrina's face, her eyes wide with pure, pathetic terror. The suit crumpled to the ground, a ruin of broken metal and wires. Dante stood over her, his chest heaving, his hands balled into fists the size of small boulders. He raised his hand for the killing blow. He was going to do it. He was going to complete the cycle, turning himself into the killer I had always feared. Part 6. The Confession. No time for thinking. I moved. I launched myself between them, catching Dante's powerful wrist just inches from Sabrina's face. My own enhanced strength was barely enough to arrest his momentum. His skin was burning hot beneath my touch, his muscles coiled and trembling. "Dante! Stop!" I cried, grabbing his other arm, pressing my body against his. I didn't use force, I used intimacy. I forced him to look at me, into my tear-filled blue eyes. "Look at her! Look at what she did! She deserves it, Taryn! She was going to take everything!" He growled, his voice a ragged edge of pure rage. "No," I whispered fiercely, holding his gaze, pleading. "She used you, once. She used me, once. But we can choose not to cross that line, especially not for her." His eyes, seconds ago filled with murderous intent, flickered. The sheer, overwhelming power radiating from his body began to subside, leaving him visibly shaking with the emotional fallout. He slowly lowered his hand, his powerful fingers unclenching. The rage drained away, leaving behind exhaustion and a look of profound, agonizing shame. He was back. The man who had been framed, the man I loved, was back. He looked down at Sabrina, who was weeping uncontrollably, realizing her reign of terror was over. He looked at the ruined mech, the wreckage of the headquarters, and then back to me, the confusion and pain finally overriding the fury. I didn't mean to," he stammered, his voice weak. I squeezed his hand. "I know. You saved me. Thank you." Sabrina, now a broken, sobbing mess, was easily secured. The evidence of the mechanical suit, the crushed control panel, and her own recorded confession, I hadn't let Dante interrupt the initial monologue entirely, was more than enough. I called the authorities, giving them an anonymous tip about a break-in gone wrong involving highly illegal weaponry, ensuring Sabrina was safely dropped into the hands of the law, where she couldn't hurt anyone else. The next few hours were a whirlwind of cleanup, quiet lies to my staff, and dealing with the devastating aftermath of the fight. Finally, as the afternoon faded into the evening, I found Dante sitting alone on the edge of the rocky outcrop near the entrance to our compound. He was silent, his head bowed, his hands resting on his knees. He looked devastated. I sat beside him, leaning my head gently against his shoulder. He didn't flinch, but he didn't relax either. "You saved me, Taryn," he finally said, his voice flat. "But you shouldn't have stopped me. You saw the power. You saw the monster." I lifted my head and turned to face him. my heart aching with the weight of 5 years of future history. I saw the man who was unjustly destroyed by a betrayal I never saw coming. I corrected him softly. I saw the man who, even in his blind, overwhelming rage, turned back because I asked him to. That's not a monster, Dante. That's a hero. I took his hands in mine, looking at his clean, unblemished face, and made a choice. No more secrets. This was the second chance. I have to tell you something, Dante, I said, looking out at the distant, shimmering ocean. Something impossible. Something you have to believe. Because everything I do now, every choice I make, depends on it. I told him everything. I didn't hold back. I told him about the stormy rooftop, the nuclear bomb, Sabrina's death, the paralysis, his face behind the mask, and his confession of vengeance. I told him about the terrifying, inevitable moment when he threw me off the building, and the terrifying, miraculous moment I woke up on the beach. I told him about the man named Inferno, the man I had loved and feared, who was the broken, tragic result of my mistake, my doubt, my failure to trust his innocence. He listened without interruption, his brown eyes widening with horror and disbelief. When I finished, the silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of the evening breeze. I became that? He whispered, his eyes distant. I became that scarred thing, full of that much hate, because you didn't believe in me? Because I was weak, I admitted, squeezing his hands. Because Sabrina was so good at planting doubt, and the evidence against you was so perfect. I chose the evidence over the man I loved, and it killed us both. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a raw, heartfelt plea. I didn't just come back to save you from Sabrina. I came back to save you from me. I came back to protect the kindness I saw in your soul, the part of you that deserved trust and devotion, not doubt. He looked at me, really looked at me, seeing not Taryn the model, but Taryn the soul-scarred survivor. And what do you want now, Taryn? What are you asking for? This was it. The moment I hadn't had in the original timeline, the true confession, offered freely, without fear of judgment or interruption. I let go of his hands, using the space to frame his face, my thumbs gently resting beneath his sharp cheekbones. I want to finish what we started, before the world broke us. I loved that man who stood on the roof of the world, even as he was trying to kill me. And I love this man, the man who let go of his rage for me. I love you, Dante. My breath hitched. I'm not a monster hunter anymore. I'm just a woman who wants to build a future with the man she nearly destroyed. I don't want to go back to being just Protectress. I want to be yours. His breath shuddered out of him, a release of 5 years of future pain that would now never happen. He looked down at my lips, his eyes dark with immediate, overwhelming emotion. Taryn. He didn't need to say anything else. He pulled me against him, crushing me into a desperate, all-encompassing embrace that was nothing like the brutal grip of Inferno. His kiss was fierce, immediate, and utterly consuming, a desperate confirmation of 2 lives colliding, a rejection of a ruined future. It was a promise of devotion, sealed with the taste of salt and hope. The kiss wasn't just physical. It was the moment our 2 fractured timelines finally merged into one whole, perfect present. The golden hour had arrived. I wasn't a superheroine saving the world. I was just Taryn, saved by the only man who truly saw me, and finally free to love him without fear. The end.
If you enjoyed this quick escape, hit the subscribe button for new stories twice a week. Until then, I'll see you at the next flip of the pages.